Hey, welcome to Graphic Policy Television GPTV. I'm Brett. For those who might not know, there's an election around the corner. Might have heard something about it. Now, you also might not know that, as much as I have the comic site that doesn't actually pay the bills, my day job is working in politics. So I care about politics and I care about people voting. And it's also kind of fascinating to see the history of comics and politics intertwined. They really do go back towards the beginning when yellow journalism was starting, in the very beginning of what we now know as modern comics. So in my hand is an interesting collection. It's called Voting is Your Superpower. It's from Yo Books and Clover Press. And it collects a whole bunch of politically inclined comics throughout the years. It goes back to 1930. There's comics up through the 60s. And they all have to do with voting and elections. And they're really interesting snippets of history, and I think that's actually really cool. So they threw this up, Clover Press threw this up on Indiegogo. I bought it, got this, like some buttons, t-shirts, stuff like that. But really, I wanted to read the comics. I'm not judging this about the reproduction value or any of that. That's not something I necessarily care about. I kind of dig the faded, old look to it all. I cared more about the comics themselves, and I think what's interesting to me, going back and reading even like back to the ones in the 30s, is much of what's written in that time is stuff that is still said today. We're looking at almost 100 years since some of these comics have been created, and things haven't changed at all. I think it's really, really fascinating. Like, one of the first comics I read in this was about people who don't vote, and that the majority of people do not vote. That is something that you hear today repeatedly over and over, that really elections are decided by the folks that don't show up. If they showed up, they would truly have the power to sway the election one way or the other, in any way they want. Not one way, in any way they want. They could get behind a third-party candidate, and that third-party candidate would win. That's how many people don't vote, and it's kind of amazing. So, I mean, the fact that we go back to almost 100 years. I mean, it's I think it's 90 years, probably just shy, like between 80 and 90 years old is the cartoon, or the comic. The fact that that's still being discussed today, I think, is an amazing thing. And a lot of the comics presented within, are things that are still discussed today. And I think that's what really stands out to me. And it's really kind of interesting. I expected maybe there'd be more of the times, and there definitely is. But I think the themes and the issues it touches on, almost are timeless. Sadly, is timeless. The other thing I think is really interesting is how things are presented at the time. There's one where I think it's the 1950s or so, talking about, you need to go out and vote, and their whole thing is like, if you don't vote, the communists will take over, and it keeps on talking about Russia and the Cold War and, what happened in Czechoslovakia and all these other countries. And I find that, there's definitely a propaganda aspect to it all, and fear-mongering about it all, but it's just fun and funny to read that and see how times have changed, and in some ways times haven't changed. I grew up on the edge of the Cold War and that fall of the Berlin Wall, so my perspective's a little bit different than maybe some who grew up in the 50s and 60s and lived through the majority of the Cold War. Other things in there, of course, there's comics having to do with African Americans and getting them to vote. And I think one of the one that I really think is kind of cool is this is produced by the NAACP and Marvel Comics, done by Larry Lieber from 1964, called Your Future Rests in Your Hands, about getting out to vote. And I think, to see something like that is really cool, and remind that these publishers have been involved in politics. These creators have been involved in politics for a really, really long time. I'm just going to kind of flip through. You can get a sense of the quality of the printing. I'm sure there's people who are much more qualified than I to talk about that. There's some things that feel like a little bit fuzzy, but at the same time, going back to my classic comics, this is kind of what I would expect to see. So it doesn't bother me as it might bother others. Like, these don't feel super restored to the point that they look modern. They look fairly of the time, which to me is pretty cool. So I love this one. Commandments for voters. Keep informed. Study the candidates. Participate. Offer your services. Encourage those with character. Always express your preference. Stimulate others to vote and consider it your moral obligation to vote. There's quizzes. It's just really fascinating bit of history and bits of knowledge and of the moments, which I think is really cool. Only thing I think, there's a couple things I would love to have seen more. There's a little bit of writing in the beginning, but I think some of the more context would have been great about it, like maybe just a page before each comic talking about it a little bit. I think that would have been kind of cool. Table of contents I actually don't think exists in this. I've looked for it a bunch of times, where I would just love a table of contents with like a list of all the creators involved. That doesn't seem to exist either. So some minor things that I would tweak. But as someone who's into politics, is into comics, like this is really, really cool. I think it's kind of sad as well that so much of it is relevant today and just has not changed. But overall, like if you are like me and you're into politics, into comics, check it out. Really cheap. It's $12.99. Cloverpress.com. Dirt cheap. Like that's, I think, a steal to get this, and it's reprints and all that, so it's not like it's new material. But I still feel like that's a hell of a deal. $12.99. I would fully expect this to be like a $24.99, $19.99 trade. So you can go get this now. It should be in comic shops. We got a link beneath this video. You put it in your zip code, tell the shops near you. No shop, no problem. We do have some affiliate links there. Well, we're going to try to do affiliate links, but we'll have some links. Some might be affiliates. If they're affiliates, of course, we get a small percentage of that by doing. You help support our site, so thank you. As always, just watching this video supports us, so thanks again. And if you're into comics, if you're into political comics, check us out every single day at graphicpolicy.com. We do what we can as far as that. We're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr, all at Graphic Policy. And most importantly, I want you to go vote. I would rather you out and go vote for someone I hate than not vote at all. I know that might sound really weird, but voting, I think, is what really, really matters. It's one where it's just something I believe in enough that I feel like everyone should participate in some way. So go learn about the candidates, find out issues that matter to you, find out which candidates support the issues that matter to you, and most importantly, go vote. In many states, you can already do early voting, and there's going to be a long line, so get out what you can, or get out when you can, and go and do your civic duty and make your voice heard. It really is your superpower and the most important thing you can do. Vote, 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 vote. As always, much appreciated. Until next time, keep reading those comics, and go vote. Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.